Over the last 15 years, Marvel Studios has generated roughly $30 billion across 34 interconnected films. By every measurable metric, it stands as the most financially successful cinematic continuity in history. To understand the foundation of that empire, you have to look at what it lacked. In the 1990s, Marvel faced bankruptcy and sold off the film rights to their most popular characters, the X-Men and Deadpool, to 20th Century Fox to stay afloat. When Marvel Studios began producing their own films in the late 2000s, they remained legally blocked from using their heaviest hitters. This forced them to build an entire cinematic universe around secondary characters who were still available, names like Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, who lacked the mainstream recognition of Wolverine or Cyclops. Lacking access to their top intellectual property mandated a reliance on meticulous character building and tight, overlapping continuity. This absence of the mutants created the exact creative discipline that eventually built a $30 billion empire. This timeline shows the release schedule for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Notice the shift in volume. After Avengers Endgame, the studio significantly increased their output across theatrical movies and streaming television, creating a cluttered grid that saw audience engagement begin to drop. The decline in quality was highly visible internally. Disney CEO Bob Iger openly acknowledged the franchise's creative fatigue, stating that the studio lost a little focus by making too much. The solution to this stagnation arrived through corporate consolidation. In 2019, the Walt Disney Company finalized a $71 billion acquisition of 21st Century Fox. Included in that massive buyout were the full cinematic rights to the X-Men. After decades of legal separation, Marvel's most famous mutants returned to the control of Marvel Studios, just as the current universe began to suffocate under its own weight. The Disney-Fox deal provided Marvel with a fresh roster of thousands of characters at the exact moment their existing storylines hit a wall. It functioned as a perfectly timed corporate rescue operation. Strict corporate acquisition laws and a locked 5-year production slate meant the X-Men could not immediately appear on screen in 2019. The integration required patience. Instead of a sudden arrival, Marvel initiated a breadcrumb strategy. They started dropping isolated mutant concepts into their streaming shows, such as introducing the criminal island of Madripoor in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Then they began modifying their own continuity. Established characters like Kamala Khan and Namor were explicitly reclassified on screen, using the word mutant to explain their genetic origins for the first time in the MCU. To accelerate audience interest, the studio deployed legacy cameos. They brought in Patrick Stewart to play Charles Xavier in a Doctor Strange sequel, and Kelsey Grammer reprised his role as Beast in the post-credit scene of The Marvels. By methodically planting these characters, locations, and genetic labels across multiple years, Marvel conditioned their audience. They carefully wove the underlying mechanics of mutation into a continuity that had survived for a decade without it. This setup culminated in the summer of 2024. Deadpool and Wolverine brought Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman under the Marvel umbrella, breaking the barrier that had kept the Fox characters isolated. By leveraging the mechanics of the multiverse, the narrative allowed Deadpool and Wolverine to step out of their defunct Fox timeline and directly interact with the overarching Marvel continuity. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige stated that this crossover was not an isolated gimmick. He officially declared that every project moving forward would be part of the studio's designated mutant era. Earning over $1 billion at the box office, the film proved that returning Fox characters could generate massive audience enthusiasm, providing the exact injection of energy the franchise needed to combat its creative slump. Looking at the upcoming theatrical slate, Marvel is gearing up for 2 massive crossover events, Avengers Doomsday in 2026 and Secret Wars in 2027. Both films are confirmed to feature returning actors from the legacy Fox X-Men movies. These 2 films are designed to act as the grand finale of the current multiverse saga. They will tie up the sprawling, overlapping storylines that have dominated the last several years of releases. Unlike the earlier phases of the MCU, which flowed continuously into the next set of adventures, Secret Wars is being positioned to create a streamlined, single universe. To successfully pivot a multi-billion-dollar machine, the current narrative structure must conclude. Marvel is closing the book on their old continuity in 2027 to clear the board for a new foundation. Once the board is cleared, Marvel Studios will execute a systemic reset. They will abandon the narrative constraints and continuity baggage of the old Avengers roster to start fresh. This timeline illustrates Feige's long-term roadmap to 2042, pivoting away from the Avengers into the Mutant saga. Reclaiming thousands of distinct mutants lets the studio tap decades of unused storylines, no longer relying on fatigued heroes or expensive veteran actors. The X-Men function as the primary strategic engine designed to reinvent the world's largest franchise for the next 20 years. They represent the studio's mechanism for survival.